Now at McDonald's, a McDouble is $2.50, so you can get your gym gains on. Or just get lunch for only $2.50. Get more value on the under $3 menu.
Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher for delivery.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Welcome in to another edition of the James Boyd Podcast. I, of course, am James Boyd. Doing my buddy, Caleb Zuver. First time here on the James Boyd Podcast. Glad to have him. Caleb, how you doing?
It's an honor. As a listener of you in the mornings and then listening to this show a lot since you've been doing it, when I got the text and the ask to be on this, I was blown away. So to sit here and recap the draft, it's going to be really fun, James, and I appreciate you asking me to do so. It's awesome.
Yeah, man. Just to fill in the listeners a little bit, Caleb fills in as a producer at 107.5 The Fan. And there's a bunch of great work for us over there. We've been pretty close friends since then and crossed paths when he was a Ball State student. I'm a little older, got a little gray hair in the beard, so I'm like Unc. But basically we've become, brothers, family over the last couple of years. So I figured Caleb would be able to give us a nice fan perspective of the draft without going too crazy, being a little too emotional sometimes, as we all are when it comes to the picks and the future of the team. But Caleb, we had quite a long weekend getting through the draft. I lived at the facility like I always do this time of year. And I'm glad to be through it and glad to recap it with you. So without further ado, we'll dive right into it. So cool. To recap for those who maybe didn't have as much time, or really it isn't their job to keep up with all this stuff like it is for me. And I say that gratefully. Don't get me wrong. I'm very grateful for the gig. I'm grateful you all support the work. But the Colts entered the 2026 draft with 7 selections, and they made it out with actually 8 because they traded back on day 2, got another 4th-round pick in there, and I believe got some pretty good players, especially at positions of need. So to recap the draft, the rundown real quick, and we'll get into like our favorite picks, best value picks, still remaining needs, things of that nature, and a few. But to recap, we have in the 2nd round, number 53, Georgia linebacker C.J. Allen. 3rd round, 78th pick, we have safety A.J. Halsey out of LSU. 4th round, they chose guard Jalen Farmer from Kentucky. Another 4th-round pick, Bryson Betcher, linebacker from Oregon. 5th round pick, George Gums Jr. Sounds like he's like a 1960s character or something like that.
Gums.
Yeah, George Gums Jr. Sounds like he played with Tunks and O'Doul or something like that back in the dead ball era or something for baseball. But he's an edge out of Florida. They also drafted the local kid, Caden Curry from Center Grove, where me and Caleb play basketball every Tuesday. So he's out of Ohio State in the 6th round. They drafted Seth McGowan, the running back out of Kentucky, in the 7th round. And then Deion Burks, the wide receiver out of Oklahoma, who actually had a very high grade in our mock drafts and our draft pre-assessments as well, out of Oklahoma. So a lot of SEC flavor in these picks, Caleb. So I'll start with the first guy off the board, C.J. Allen. He is the headliner for this group. I would expect him to be a day 1 starter. What was your reaction to having him join the team and also presumably fill a very big void and hole left in the middle of that defense after the team traded Zaire Franklin?
I think it was interesting the way the board was kind of falling, James, because, and obviously the question was, would they trade back and try to get more? And they did. And I think that was the right decision. But it was interesting because, I think going into the day, the fan in me wanted Rodriguez from Texas Tech.
Yeah.
And I was really, high on him. And then, kind of some edges started to go, some linebackers started to go. I think when it got to that point, I think a lot of fans wanted to see, hey, can we just get a linebacker or edge here?
Yeah.
And so I think to see it addressed is good. But when you look at CJ, James, and I know you wrote about some of this, like I really think it's fascinating that this kind of kicked off what was the theme, like you said, of just SEC guys, multi-year starters. They've played in big games. And I think, and we can talk about this throughout, but like they've played against other NFL players.
Yeah.
And so you get someone like CJ Allen, who was a signal caller, who, I think what is it, the green dot?
Yep, the green dot.
Wearing the green dot. So that means he calls the plays and stuff. Like, I don't know if that's what he'll be asked to do when he comes in this summer, but you're giving yourself a chance for someone that's got to come in and probably start right away and make a big impact right away.
Absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned like you don't know, you're not sure. It's not like they're pretty sure. I mean,
Yeah.
Chris Ballard came in right after the draft because we like to hedge it, myself included, where I'm like, I don't want to like say this is exactly what this role is going to be. But I mean, outside of just telling us flat out from Chris Ballard's mouth, he's going to start from day one, it was everything but that. And so that would be the assumption. And with the value of the pick, it makes sense. And to your point, yes, I felt like the Colts would trade back to recoup more draft capital. And with the way the board fell, with so many edge rushers kind of getting taken, it made sense for them to still move back and ultimately get their guy in TJ Allen. He's a fast dude, plays hard, high character, started as a true freshman at Georgia in the SEC. Like, you can't really be a slouch. And I get it. Big Ten contingent listens to this podcast as well. No shade there. Big Ten's king. Don't get me wrong. I'm an Illinois guy. But, I mean, it's no slouch to have that opportunity. So, he is the crown jewel of this draft class and someone I would expect to, really not only step into a big hole on the field, but a big leadership role, because you lose Zaire Franklin, who was a multi-year captain and a multi-year starter, and you replace him with a guy who should be able to hit the ground running and help lead this defense. So that to me was not a surprising pick at all. CJ Allen was somebody we had all kind of talked about possibly being there. And I think it probably made it a little bit sweeter, Caleb, because you got him and you didn't have to necessarily reach for him, if that makes sense.
No, and when you look at the order, James, and how like I said, the board was falling. Edge at 33, 35, and 36 that was taken. I don't know if they would have went a different direction, but like you said, a linebacker hadn't been picked in a while up until then. So CJ was a pretty clear kind of choice, it felt like there. So I think it's good. And as we move through here, I, as a fan who's as pessimistic and down about the way things have gone the last few years as anybody, like I do think what needed to be accomplished in this draft did get accomplished. And I think CJ is a great start. You needed somebody that is going to come in and lead and be, someone who's had experience in big games. I mean, he started starting as a freshman, so it's more than 2 years as a starter. Exactly. So, and at a program like Georgia, I mean, come on. So it always, and I don't know, maybe you would know better than me. It does feel like we get into a lot of these drafts, and Ballard does take he takes some small school guys. He takes, but this is you look up and down here, it's all Big Ten SEC.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's a little change of pace.
Caleb, he said that was an emphasis, guys that played in big games, played against, like you said, NFL caliber competition, and have a ton of experience. And so that leads me to my next little segment here of what was your favorite pick? Because necessarily it can be the first pick because it was a good one in my opinion, but more so your flavor or your style, whether it's was it a more bang for your buck pick? Was it a personality thing? Was it a feel? Because to start off for myself, I would say my favorite pick, quite honestly, might have been just from a energy and interview standpoint as well as a need, was AJ Halsey, the safety out of LSU. Very unique path to the NFL. He's someone who played at 3 different programs, started at New Mexico, then went to Houston, and then went to LSU and earned all conference honors at each stop and started at each stop. And really, I mean, to go from playing at Houston and being all Big 12 or whatever, and then within 1 year you transfer to LSU, your last year of playing college football, and you're starting in the SEC and you're making plays, and you earn all first team SEC nod. So he was awesome, Caleb. The energy he gave in his post-draft interview, I mean, he has this accent. I don't know where he's from, but he's Southern. He just kept saying, let's do it. I'm ready. I'm locked in. And so the energy was amazing. But beyond that, I wasn't mad at him taking a safety. I was a little surprised, but I wasn't mad because, again, a good value pick. He was, I believe, ranked in the top 70 of our rankings with Dane Brugler, who was our draft guru, and I think the Colts took him at 78. So good value for the pick. Fills another hole. He should be a day one starter, I would think, across from Cam Bynum on the back end, and he's just somebody that I thought was, again, fun personality, very experienced, pretty good athlete as well. He can run. He's not just a strong safety. He can play strong or free, and I think he adds to Lou Anarumo's versatility on the back end. So that was my kind of favorite pick of the night or favorite pick of the weekend. Where would you lean?
Yeah, quickly, just on AJ. First, like that word versatility.
Yes.
That's what sticks out. That's what I think is going to be a real weapon. And I don't know. Maybe, and last year was, I guess, Lou Anarumo's first draft as defensive coordinator. But I wonder if, like, when he likes to dial up those exotic blitzes, like I was watching a little of AJ yesterday. Like, there's some plays where he's coming in through some of those different kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
doctored up blitzes. So it's like he might be a weapon to use in that sense too. So very, very versatile. We were talking about this morning, and I I don't know if he's gonna be good, but I do feel like when you get in the later rounds, betting on someone that was really productive, not just because of the Indiana ties, but betting on someone that was really productive is, I mean, it's what you got to do. And they waited to draft edge until round 5, and then they go to round 6 and take Caden Curry. I think it's gonna be interesting. Like, he only started for 1 year. He played in, Ohio State had a lot of, especially, he was probably going to play a year earlier because guys like JTT, Jack Sawyer came back on that Ohio State team rather than going to the draft. So in theory, he probably could be a 2-year starter. Didn't transfer, stayed. I like that. And the measurables, I guess, are the concern. What is it? The arms are the kind of
he's got
concern
about,
with him.
I think, 30-inch arms, some of the shortest arms of any edge rusher in the draft.
Sure.
So that's the knock on him. But to let you continue, he also had an awesome season at a big-time program for a big-time team. I mean, this isn't like some one-off school that kind of was like out of nowhere. Like, that is the Ohio State.
Exactly. And so I thought that was like the pick I loved the most. I don't know if you want to talk about this too, and maybe this would fit another category you're going to talk about. But I remember I think Eddie Garrison maybe even asked you this when you went on Aquarium Company last week. But the offensive line depth, and were they going to address that? Were they going to get somebody?
Yeah.
So I think I don't know much about Jalen Farmer, but I think just like taking that and maybe he's the rotational piece, or maybe he kicks somebody else to be the rotation. Like, they need somebody like that Danny Pinter kind of role, I guess,
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, because this leads me to like my whole like what's your most surprising kind of pick of the draft. And this one was kind of surprising to me because I felt like they were going to address offensive line, because I think most NFL teams, if you have 7, 8, 9 picks, you probably should take an offensive lineman, because it's funny, as fans and even as media members, like, most of our stories are written about the skill position players, but whenever we watch a game and teams cannot compete in the trenches, it's so clearly obvious that they need help there. And then I end up writing the story like, they should have drafted an offensive line. What were they thinking? And then 3 months ago, I was not saying that at all. So don't check my, my little history or check me on that. But yes, I kind of think that with where they selected Jalen Farmer in the 4th round, and keep in mind, they've done this with drafting 4th and 3rd round linemen that have kind of stepped into starting roles. If you think of where Matt Gonzalez was drafted, he was a 3rd round pick. If you think of where Jalen Travis was picked, just a short while ago, last year, I believe he was a 4th round pick. He's projected to be the right tackle. But part of me thinks like, okay, so right now you're starting offensive line, left tackle Bernard Ryman, he's the dude. Left guard, Quentin Nelson, Hall of Famer. Of course, he's the guy. At center, you have Tanner Bortolini. It seems like he's the dude. At right guard and right tackle, that's where I'm still kind of like, with Jalen Farmer coming in, I'm a little curious, because right now you have Matt Gonzalez at right guard. You would have Jalen Travis taking over for Braden Smith, who left in free agency. Contract expired. No one was surprised by that. But with Jalen Farmer, his long arms, he was a right guard in college, but they were telling us last night, some of the scouts, Caleb, that they think that he could have tackle potential. So it makes me think that even Shane Steichen was saying, oh, this is pretty much an open competition. I would give the slight edge to Jalen Travis started right tackle. I would give the edge, obviously, to Matt Gonzalez started right guard. But it sounds like Jalen Farmer will be able to push those dudes and really contend to potentially have a role, perhaps a starting role within this offensive line. So I'm very curious when it comes to training camp for someone like him.
Yeah, and we can get into the edge conversation about, because you've talked ad nauseum about Chris Ballard's struggle drafting edge, but I mean, I trust his offensive line drafting capabilities, and so this is something where, like, putting trust in him, but it is just going to be very interesting to see who is kind of just who gets kind of kicked to the curb there. And this has been something he's talked about the last couple years, really last two. You know, gotta have competition. Gotta have competition. There's a lot of competition at training camp to be had on this roster again this year, which I think is good. And one of those, like you said, that right side of that offensive line, which when we talk about Daniel Jones and you know, was the book out on him that like, hey, like get pressure with him and he doesn't know what to do with it, like especially up the middle, which is that right guard spot, you know, you need someone there. So I think that's going to be interesting, and we'll see how that one plays out. But yeah, I agree with, like, it was a little surprising too, but I think it's what they needed to, at some point, take somebody there.
Big thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp, for partnering with us for this important conversation about mental health.
This is Steve Smith here, former NFL wide receiver and host of the 89 Show on YouTube. So having a counselor and working with BetterHelp, that gives you an opportunity to really start to unpack. But people don't understand, when you unpack things, you also open up a box that you're not always sure what's inside. So I think that's why seeing a professional is extremely important. If you need someone to open up to, visit BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/89 to get started.
We've all been there. You're away for the weekend, the big game is on, and you realize you're restricted from watching. Or maybe you're trying to check the latest lines on your betting app, but your local network is blocking the site. These are the ultimate unforced errors. You can prevent this from happening to you with IPVanish. IPVanish is the powerhouse VPN designed to keep you in the game no matter where you are. IPVanish helps you stay connected to your favorite team and streaming services while you travel. But it's not just about watching the game. For the bettors out there, IPVanish provides an extra layer of security and privacy that helps you access your account safely on public Wi-Fi. Plus, IPVanish is lightning fast, so you won't have to worry about lag during those crucial live betting moments. Right now, get a massive discount at IPVanish.com. That's IPVanish.com to get started today. Secure your play and go to IPVanish.com.
Yeah, you bring up a very good point. I hadn't really thought of it, but yes, and it's so simple of a thought. But the quarterback that you're leaning on, he doesn't always look that great when he's under pressure. And two, he's coming off an Achilles injury that will probably limit his mobility to some degree. Unless he's Jason Tatum 2.0 and he looks like he's great from the first time he steps back on the grass, then so be it. I'm all for it. Daniel Jones, as boring as he is in the interview, he seems like a great human being. The guys in the locker room love him. So I am, from a human perspective, rooting for him to stay healthy. I mean, I don't think any reporter can be biased against injuries, right? So that to me is a factor. But yeah, if he's compromised in any way, you want to make sure that you can show up that offensive line. So from that perspective, it is good to always add some insurance there. So to pivot a little bit to another topic that I had listed here on a little rundown, Caleb, part of me thinks that there are still some glaring needs within this team. I know they addressed running back and wide receiver kind of late. And actually, I will take a stab here and kind of lay this down because I know this was a topic of conversation. So Seth McGowan, the running back out of Kentucky, who they took in the 7th round, one of the first things that you see when you Google him is that he was arrested back in, I believe, 2021, got charged with a few felonies and ended up spending 3 months in jail. Very disturbing things for sure, like something that you don't want to overlook at all, and something that was definitely at least asked and addressed by Chris Ballard, who talked about it. And even when we talked to Seth McGowan during the draft about he was saying, hey, I had to wait. This was kind of some adversity for me. And part of me wanted to be like, okay, well, not to judge your past or yourself too much, but how much can you disclose about some of this being perhaps self-inflicted, the decisions you made? And so, again, he was charged with robbery, conspiracy, and assault and battery with a dangerous weapon in 2021, got dismissed from Oklahoma, spent 2 years away from football, worked his way back. He went to Butler Community College, not to be confused with Butler University, but he went to a community college, worked his way back up to New Mexico State, and they ended up playing at Kentucky. So he's kind of in a way, a younger player, even though his age is one thing. Doesn't have a lot of tread on the tire. We'll probably need to play some special team stuff to get on the roster, but they did kind of address running back kind of late. But I just want to put that out there. Like the Colts said they vetted it. We spoke to him. Sound like he was pretty remorseful of the decisions that he made back then. I'm not here to say you should have a second chance or not, but I didn't want to not address the elephant in the room. But also beyond just running back, Caleb, I think when it comes to wide receiver, that was one too where I felt like where they took a guard, I was like, is that going to be a receiver? Because they waited until the last pick of the draft to draft Deion Burks. I think they got great value for him. He was projected to be like a 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick, 7th round pick. Very explosive player. I mean, he ran a 4.3, had 26 bench press reps, even though he's only like a $180. He's a very like strong, wiry dude. So
contested catches, I think he's got a good resume for that.
Exactly. But the question I want to ask you, Caleb, is, as much as we want to look at what these players can bring into this room, they were also 7th round picks.
Right.
So do you feel like the Colts addressed enough wide receiver and running back, or do you think that is something that they need to keep an open mind with when it comes to maybe the latter stages of free agency?
Yeah. So it's actually really funny you bring this up because I wrote down, and I talk to my dad all the time, season ticket holder since 1994.
Shout out Uncle Mo, baby.
Uncle Mo, so he was getting really down that the Colts didn't address wide receiver. And I understand it. I absolutely do. And I think I do agree with it to an extent. But my thing was I wasn't expecting them to address that in the, within the first 4 or 5 selections that they made, because to me, this had to be in defensive draft. It had to be. And he was saying, Chris Ballard was saying all offseason, we got to get younger on defense. And so it really didn't shock me. And, would have been cool to see Elijah Surratt take the Michael Pittman Jr. role.
Sure.
Yeah, like it would have been seamless. But I also think you got to trust that you're paying Alec Pierce a lot of money. Josh Downs now maybe can get an even bigger role, and I think he deserves that. And then you give this kid Burks a try. You give him a chance to compete for it. But outside of that, 2 receivers is pretty good, and it's better than some years in the Ballard era where it felt like we had 1 receiver. So we got 2 really good receivers, and here's the last point, James, about the receiver thing, and that I'll quickly just running back and then be done talking.
Oh, you're fine.
But I think the difference, because this has been a conversation in the past about Chris Ballard and receivers or whatever, I think the difference now is, to me, at least how I look at it, Tyler Warren is a receiving threat. And good point. Yeah. He's not a receiver, but he catches the ball. He's someone in the passing game you go to. So it's like, can you say 2.5 receive? He's a threat in the passing. He opens up stuff for other people. I think having him there, and hopefully, he can play well into November and December next year. But I think that factors into it too, where maybe it's not as much of a need because you have someone like him that can do so much. And then just quickly on Seth too, I think Ballard always takes guards, and the last couple of years he's taken running backs. Was it Giddens last year that he took? Mm-hmm. So I think you've pointed this out a lot, James, over the past couple months, that they needed running back depth. So I don't know if he'll get a chance. Yeah.
Caleb, and not to cut you off, and which is always funny, people say that and they cut you off, but
no, it's okay.
Jump in real quick.
Yeah, you
and say
needed
this.
to there. You needed to there.
No, I want to say this. I want to say this real quick. The reason why I think they need running back depth is because what Jonathan Taylor did last year was an anomaly.
Yes,
he wasn't on the injury report once all year as a running back, and this is a dude who throughout his career has had some injury history. Yes. So I think going into 2026, I'm not saying you need to dial it back with JT. No, you paid him. He's your bell cow. He's one of the best backs in the league. And if he has, 3 or 4 more seasons like last year, we might be saying, hey, is this a Hall of Famer? That's how talented he is. But I just think they need a little bit more insurance there, because the likelihood of him playing 17 games, not getting banged up, is just not true. Because in the 3 years prior to last year, he missed multiple games due to injury in each one of them, whether it was an ankle sprain, whether it was a thumb that 1 year. And so things like that to me are why, I can't feel that confident in just DJ Giddens and just Seth McCowan. Amir Abdullah, I think, is still out there. He was pretty good for the Colts last year, pretty serviceable. Like, that's somebody that you would trust in a role like that. So I'm just curious to see how they evaluate running back moving forward. And not only running back and wide receiver, because it sounds like they want to, beyond running back, you have a star there, but when it comes to receiver, they want to kind of do it by committee. Like they mentioned, we asked Shane about this. He mentioned Ashton Dulin. He mentioned Westbrook Akinye. He mentioned Laquan Treadwell and guys like that, and that's fine. But like those dudes collectively still may not be what you're losing in Michael Pittman Jr.
Would you have liked to have seen them take a wide receiver earlier?
I probably would have. I probably would have gone with a wide receiver earlier than maybe a lineman. But again, I'm thinking of it from probably the entertainment value. And they're probably thinking of it like, well, hey, we got to make sure our quarterback can stay upright. Right. And to give Shane his credit, I do think he's one of the best play callers in the league. And if you have to scheme up, guys being open, or like you said, if you have to utilize Tyler Warren in different ways, I think it's easier to kind of toggle with that than it is to try to, do it some other way where you don't have a mind like Shane to do it. Like, for example, we're talking about remaining needs, and I kind of glossed over it a little bit because they did take 2 edge rushers. But even then, like, they don't have, in my opinion, still a surefire starter opposite of Latu. And it sounds like they're going to use the, defensive end by committee approach, which is fine, I guess. But, like, that's another one where I'm like, man, are you going to sign a veteran? You did draft 2 guys there. Like, are you going to just try to see who can emerge? They keep telling us that Jalen Tuimoloau, who likes to be called Jalen now, just to, for those who are curious, that's JT2 I'm referring to. Jalen, he's saying, Chris is telling us, well, Jalen can be a guy. You guys are glossing over him. Well, I'm sorry, Colts GM. He didn't play last year. He was a healthy scratch. I had to look it up, Caleb. He was a healthy scratch, 0 starts, 0 sacks. And you're telling me, oh, he's got a chance to start. Like, that is not that encouraging to me. No. So when I look at some of the other deficiencies, I'm still saying, hey, I'm not going to hate on this draft. I think this draft, I have to give it a grade. I would give the Colts probably a B. I mean, there isn't a reason for me to feel bad about what they did. But part of me is also like, you lost so much. You have 5 or 6 starters moving on to new teams from last year. And I'm not saying they shouldn't have moved on or you should have kept them all. Not at all. Like, some of those guys had to go. But did you replace them with adequate level talent? And at edge, I'm still a little worried, Caleb, because, you need Latu to make a big leap, but you also need these other guys to do something on the other side.
Absolutely. And just with where this team was at going into this, right? It's like, have they gotten better this offseason? No. Do they have a first-round pick to help alleviate that? No. And so you're really going into this behind the 8 ball. Like you just were. And so that's why I say, like, just all things considered, you take a look at the team like the Texans, for instance. They don't have many holes, and they get it pick 28. They take a defensive lineman, Caden McDowell. They have plenty. He might be a rotational piece to start his career. The Colts, on the other hand, like, we have to get guys that are going to come in right away. And they lost the defensive pieces. So you were dealt a tough hand, and I probably shouldn't even say it because it's the hand that they've created for themselves. But that's and so I and wide receiver and edge, both of those things, they have created those kind of situations for themselves. But I just think overall, it's what you had to do, and that doesn't mean it's going to work out great. And then really the question is, does it matter? Does it matter that they did what they had to do? I don't know.
That's a good question. And you know what? I'll raise you this, Caleb, and kind of piggyback off that idea. Does it matter if it works in the long run? Because I thought about this over the weekend when I was going through some draft history, and we look at 2022 and we say, you know what? That was a really good draft. They didn't have a first-round pick, but they got some dudes. But I was there during 2022, and boy, it was not pretty. Jeff Saturday era. I don't want to relive that. But when they drafted Alec Pierce, he had a rocky start to his career. He actually dropped his first ever touchdown pass and then got concussed in the same game as NFL debut. How about that for, the start to your NFL career? And he's bounced back tremendously. He's become arguably the best deep threat receiver we've seen since prior to Deshaun Jackson. That's what the stats say.
Yeah.
But it took him a while to kind of come on. Left tackle Bernard Ryman was also taken that year. It took him a while to become the left tackle of the future, so to speak. And then you also, in that draft, had Nick Cross. Nick Cross started 4 games his first 2 years. He was benched. And then he came on and became a starting caliber safety that obviously had a pretty good market, went back home to the Washington Commanders. He's from the DMV area. But my point is, even if you hit on these picks, you need to hit on them like tomorrow. Right. And that, to me, is kind of the stress of it all. Because with Chris Ballard, I mean, this is the final year of your contract. You're amid a 5-year playoff drought. You hitched your wagon to Daniel Jones. You've traded away some of your, I guess, more franchise pillars, which I'm not saying you had to hold on to them, because as much as I liked, Zaire and Michael Pittman Jr. and Braden Smith and all these guys that have left or of their own doing or have been traded, the point is, Caleb, they didn't win nothing. So you can't be too beholden to them. You know what I mean? And so that to me is probably like where I'm at with this draft haul and what they need. Because at first, at minimum, the first 2 guys you picked have to be dudes right away. AJ Halsey, CJ Allen, they got to be dudes. And then beyond that, you did add some good depth. And I'll give a shout out to, Bryce Betcher out of Oregon. Right. Great value pick there. I don't hate that. The former baseball star turned football guy, led the Big Ten in tackles last year. He should be competing for a rotational spot and lose defense. Pretty good athlete, can run and stuff like that. That's fine. Yeah. But beyond that, I still think there's a couple of different things that you just couldn't fully address on the draft. And with the kind of like a pedestrian, free agency period, I don't know if you fully addressed that as well, which leads me to perhaps my last point of the pod. There was a part of me that thought maybe Saturday we would see some movement, Caleb, but to no cigar. We had close, but no cigar. And we were asking Chris Ballard about this afterwards regarding Kenny Moore II, Anthony Richardson Sr. Hey, weren't able to trade these guys. What's next? And he said, nothing yet. We'll see how it plays out. Now, right now, we're some voluntary OTA, so guys do not have to show up. But when we get to that more mandatory part, I believe later on in the spring, that's when it gets a little more awkward. Do you welcome these guys back into the fold? Do you cut them? So asking you, GM Caleb Zuver, what do you think happens? Because both situations are similar in some ways, but also very uniquely different in other ways.
That's a great way to put it. I had some of the same conversations. You met Cooper when he came down and visited me the first weekend of the Colts season, and we were talking about this. He thought Kenny was gonna, maybe get dealt, and the Colts were gonna maybe pick up a 6th-round pick or something like that for him. I just think this. I want to make this point because just start at you because I've thought a lot about it. I think it's one thing when you have a really, really good player, a star player, say that he wants to trade. I think there is a market there, and you can build it up, and you can really get some for him. I love Kenny, and maybe I'm selling him short here, but and Kenny's been a great Colt, but was Kenny good enough to demand a market? To have a bidding war from other teams, it just hasn't felt that way. And obviously, Anthony Richardson, no, I don't think he's good enough to have a bidding market. And so it does become now this question: what are the dynamics in the locker room? How are they welcomed back? And to me, it's almost a full circle moment, especially with Anthony.
Yeah.
That it's, it was not locker room issues that kind of started this whole thing, but there were definitely some teammates that were upset he tapped out, right? Yeah. So I think that is a kind of interesting full circle that now we're here again, and it's not through really his fault if the Colts say, all right, we can't trade you, we're going to keep you. How does that go over? Because he obviously wanted to be out of here. You're asking me and I said all that, and you asked me what I think is going to happen.
Well,
Is that
I
right?
don't know. I won't put you on the spot like that because I think
I don't have the sources,
yeah,
James.
people clip it.
I don't report.
But I'll say this:
I don't-
it's someone who's definitely tried to reach out about both.
yeah.
Chris Ballard did say he would kind of grant Kenny some latitude with
Sure.
whatever goes down, which makes me think that one, Kenny will not be back here, and also he has a kind of a hefty payday for his upcoming season. So when teams say they don't want Kenny, I think it's we don't want this
Money.
aging cornerback
Sure.
at this price. I believe he still has like $10 million base salary for the upcoming
Right.
season, and the
Great
Colts
point.
actually would get some financial relief from cutting him. They would create about, I think, $7 million in cap space if they just straight out released him. So I think that's a possibility that could still happen, and it probably will happen without finding a trade partner. With Anthony, there is no financial relief, but I think that it's reached this point where it might just be untenable. Like, if he comes back, you can kind of say, like, oh, he's going to be a great teammate. He will come back to be QB3. Like, the way they talk
Yes.
about him, he's not going to be competing with Riley for QB2 reps. He's going to be the afterthought on the roster, and I'm just not sure if that's beneficial for the team or for him. So do you bite the bullet? Do you embarrass yourself perhaps a little bit by saying, hey, we missed. We have to cut the number 4 pick in the draft. That's going to be a big headline if that happens.
Yeah.
But I think that's a real thing that Chris Ballard is trying to dismiss a little bit. I just feel like with all the things that's happened with Anthony, you cannot sit up here now and say, oh, you know what? We'll bring you back just in case we need you. It just doesn't seem realistic to me. So that's where we're at, Caleb. I mean, made it to the draft, but still have these looming questions about what could happen next for two sort of notable members of the team, two former team captains. And so I'm very curious how it all goes
Crazy
down.
to say.
And it
is crazy.
Former team captains, that is a
It's
fact.
crazy.
Whether Anthony should have been a captain early on is a whole other conversation going forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just so many layers to it, and still sort of this newsy Colts offseason, which has kind of been mild. It's still this news kind of like bubble hanging over everybody's head. Sure. And so we'll see how it plays out. So the last thing I want to end the show with, perhaps something new I'll try out. And I did this back in college when I was a resident advisor, and my boss back then, Nathan Runnels, great dude, he would always ask us at the beginning and end of our meeting, like, what was our high-low high of the week? And so high-low high could be anything, Caleb. Your high means like the best thing. Low means, we got to, repeat the down or something like that, or, and they end on a high note. So to give you an example, my high-low high, my high, getting through the draft. It feels like it's the longest weekend ever whenever I'm covering the NFL. So a lot of long days over at West 56th Street. My low was not closing out to you in the corner this morning.
I know. It was big. It was a big one.
Yeah, and you hit a 3 that hurt me, and so we ended up losing
guarding
the
2,
game.
though.
I know, but still gotta get a hand up there. And then my other high would be doing my first pod with you, my brother. I think we gotta make sure we keep this as a regular thing.
Would love to, and that's gonna be my first high for sure. Is coming on here. I've been looking forward to it all week. My low, and maybe this will be a good introduction. The audience doesn't know me. I'll be open and honest here. I shot my shot this week, James, with somebody.
Okay.
And they never opened the message.
Oh.
So hey, we moved.
Shoot, baby.
Exactly. And that's what I do. And we move. I'm proud of myself. It's growth.
There we go.
I stepped out of my comfort zone.
There we go.
Which can be. I could have twisted that and spin that into a high. And then my last high would probably you did schedule this pod at 1 p.m., which is tip off with the Cavs game.
Sorry.
And I went earlier this week with my cousin. I went to Cleveland. We've kind of grown close because of the Cavs, and it was good to watch game 2 with him. And so hopefully I can come on down the road and say my high was them winning a title, but we'll see if that happens. I'm not overly confident that's going to be the case, but we'll see.
All right. Well, look, man, I appreciate
the
the time. And for those listening, thank you all for tuning in. It was, again, a crazy weekend, fun weekend. I appreciate all the support, whether it's here on the James Boy podcast, whether it's 107.5 The Fan, whether it's over at The Athletic, whether you listen to Caleb, over at The Fan as well, and he's doing, late night producing and stuff like that. Yeah. I'm sure, speaking for him and myself, we appreciate the support. Can't really do the job without, fanatics and crazy fans and people who support Indianapolis sports. So we'll check in with you all pretty soon here as things continue to roll throughout the spring. And until then, stay safe, have fun, enjoy this great weather outside.